Stay tuned for the GSN Digest. Welcome to the GSN Digest, a short program of various features. The show starts now.
Hi again, this is episode number 6. Late October and they're still trying to find out who's going to win the World Series. Speaking Sports is all about that. The second installment of Our Man on Mars looks at what those first moments on the red planet might be like. Pieces of History reflects on the great stock market crash of 1929, and Notations remembers Fats Domino. But first, a little history of Halloween on the Newswatch.
This is the Newswatch.
On this week's edition of the Newswatch, we'll switch gears to say a few things about Halloween. Halloween has been celebrated for centuries. Many people it began as part of autumn rituals, and is largely a pagan celebration originating in British and Irish or Celtic traditions. Others believe that its origins has a lot to do with ancient Christian beliefs. Down through the years, Halloween has been steeped in tradition that has changed in different cultures. It is still based largely in spiritual beliefs. It was originally a time to pray for the souls of the dead, but in recent times, Halloween is mainly an excuse for some to get stoned or drunk out of their ever-loving minds, and commit acts of plain mischief, vandalism, arson, even murder. Something good that does come out of Halloween is the collecting of funds for UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, to provide aid to children in developing countries. The program was started in Philadelphia in the early 1950s, but was scrapped due to health and safety concerns. Collections for UNICEF are now being taken in churches, schools, and community centers. Halloween has a long history and has become tradition, but has changed in meaning from a spiritual celebration to a strictly commercial time of year with costumes, decorations, and candy sales. What will it be like in future years is anyone's guess. This is Speaking Sports, a weekly sports feature. Last week I wrote something, and as I write this, the series between the LA Dodgers and Houston Astros is tied. Anything can still happen because Houston won its first World Series game, winning 7-6 in Game 2. Now the series really gets interesting. I usually don't watch a lot of baseball, but at this time of year, I gobble it up like I do with hockey. I've always been a bit of a bandwagon hopper when it comes to sports. I go with whoever's hot. Others I tend to make wild guesses. The Blue Jays didn't make it, but some of the Toronto media still make references to them as though they were still waiting in the wings. That makes me sick. My early prediction is that the Dodgers will win, but the Astros might make it interesting, and so far, they're tied, and when this hits the site, the thing might be done. Hang on to your hats and bats, and don't throw anything at the TV, because it ain't over yet.
This is the GSN Digest, a short program of various features.
Well, the World Series is sure turning out to be a dogfight, isn't it? Can you just see yourself standing on the red planet? This is what we think it might be like. Let's just say we've entered the Martian atmosphere and are getting to decide who goes first. Once that has been made, the person steps out and is the first person to set foot on Mars. What will be their first words? For starters, they would have to use some primitive mode of radio transmission, something like a walkie-talkie or cell phone. That signal would be beamed up to a reconnaissance spacecraft. The signal might only take a second or two. If it is relayed, it might take about 22 minutes for it to reach Earth. A return signal back to Mars might take another 22 minutes, meaning for a round-trip transmission to take up to 44 or 45 minutes. When Neil Armstrong made his one small step speech, it took only seconds to reach Earth. Mars, on the other hand, is about 46 million miles away, and so the message will most likely be recorded then beamed back to Earth for broadcast around the world. Earlier missions would have used robots to construct some simple structures for the crew to call home. They'll be spending roughly 18 months in their new surroundings because one Martian year is roughly 18 Earth months long. If they plan to leave Earth, it might be in November and arrive on Mars in April or May, and hopefully in the Martian spring. Once they've had a short look around and said those first words, the real work begins in earnest. This is Pieces of History, looking back at the past. The Wall Street crash, also known as Black Tuesday, happened on October 29, 1929. It was the most devastating stock market collapse in U.S. history. Actually, it really began on October 24 and was preceded by the London exchange crash in September. During the month before the crash, many industries experienced a boom in stocks and many people bought stocks and millions were circulated. When some stocks went down in price, people continued buying, hoping for things to get better, but when the crash occurred, many people lost everything they invested in. Following October 29, many banks and the U.S. Congress brought in measures to curtail trading and stabilize markets, but things continued for years, leading to the era in history we call the Great Depression, a 12-year period of high prices, high unemployment, and slow economic growth. Some countries slowly recovered, while others languished in this depression until the early 40s when the USA entered World War II. There have been other economic downturns, some lasting only days, others lasting longer, but none will match GHE stock market crash of October 1929.
Listening to the GSN Digest, a short program of various features. The show continues.
October 1929 was sure a dark time for most who were around back then. Let's reflect a bit on the life of one of rock and roll's pioneers.
This is Notations, a music feature.
The music industry lost a major figure when legendary bluesman and early rock and roll singer Fats Domino died October 24 at the age of 89 years old. He started recording in 1949 with a song called Fat Man, scaled-down version of a song called Junker's Blues, a song about drug addicts. The record sold more than 1 million copies by 191, becoming the first rock and roll record to achieve that level. Throughout the 1950s and into the 60s, Fats Domino had a string of hits including Blueberry Hill, Blue Monday, Ain't That a Shame and numerous others. Blueberry Hill was a cover which was a 1940 song previously recorded by people like Louis Armstrong and Gene Autry as well as other artists. The record sold more than 5 million copies in 1956 and was put in the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1989. Domino's concerts weren't without havoc though. At some of his shows, riots broke out, mainly due to racial mixing, and some of it had to do with alcohol at some of the shows. Domino jumped through a window at one show to avoid the fracas. He and a couple of his band members were slightly injured. A short time later, he appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show without any disturbance. Domino received numerous awards and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986, becoming one of its first inductees. He has also been inducted into the Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame, the Grammy Hall of Fame 1987, plus numerous Lifetime Achievement Awards. In 2005, Fats Domino and his family were one of many victims of Hurricane Katrina. He lost everything. He chose to stay at his home in New Orleans because his wife Rosemary was in poor health. The house was heavily flooded. Rumors circulated that Fats Domino was dead and some vandal scrawled, "R.I.P. Fats, you will be missed." Domino and his family were rescued by the Coast Guard and spent some time in a shelter in Baton Rouge and 3 days in an apartment rented by J.A. Marcus Russell, the starting quarterback for the Louisiana University football team, and the boyfriend of Domino's granddaughter. Fats Domino had an immense influence on music and is partially responsible for breaking down racial barriers. He has done a lot of good in his 89 years and help when he could. Fats Domino will go down in history not only as an early pioneer of rock and roll, but as one of the finest blues performers.
Group of Dashes, tune in next time for another edition of Notations.
Fats Domino was sure a force in the blues music scene and will sure be missed. Hey man, today's a special day and in a few hours, we'll be dressing up and enjoying Halloween. So get out there and treat you taste buds to some sugar. See you next week.
That's all for this week. We hope you enjoyed the show. Your feedback is more than welcome. Drop us a line at programs@gsnvancalvarbc.ca or visit us at gsnvancalvarbc.ca. We're back next week with another edition of the GSN Digest. Thanks for tuning in. So long for now.